hey Brian, I have friends who have all these things on their resume. They already have buy side experience, sell side experience, trade side experience, middle side experience, and I got nothing. It's been about a month since I've launched this investment banking career consulting service, so I've talked to about 50-ish of you guys, and I've seen a recurring theme of challenges and difficulties associated with investment banking recruiting. Currently, I'm obviously about 2, 3, maybe 4 years out now from investment banking recruiting, so I got a refresh of what's difficult nowadays. It seems not very different from what I went through, but here are a list of things and my thoughts on what makes investment banking recruiting so difficult in 2021 and ways you can overcome them so you don't have to spend the time and money to talk to me for 30 minutes. The biggest barrier to entry for investment banking recruiting is barrier to entry itself. Target school versus non-target school. I don't think this is unique to banking, as I talk to more of you about non-banking related rules. All jobs, many jobs, directly hire out of specific schools. You're not going to see big tech, Amazon, software engineering shy away from the MITs and Caltechs of the world because that's where all the brightest minds are for those roles. Ironically, I don't think all the brightest minds for banking, all the hardest working people exist at these target schools, but banking, being a traditional old school industry, likes adhering to this target school mentality of hiring directly out of schools that they've always directly hired out of. So most of you that I've spoken to and most of the issues that I've seen involved with recruiting has to do with not being at a target school and not knowing when you were 17 applying for colleges that you were going to want to do banking and you were applying to the wrong school. I'm not blaming you because who knows what they want to do when they're 17. I think there's two tangible ways to combat this. One, there probably exists at least one person at your school who's broken into banking, or maybe 2 or maybe 3, at least a handful. I would reach out to them and use them, take advantage of them as much as possible. They've been through the same pain and they probably want to help you knowing that you are going through the same thing and you are someone from their school lineage. And then 2, unfortunately, I would try reaching out to random people on LinkedIn via personal connections because the best way into banking, the best way to jump over that barrier to entry is through people in the industry. The second thing that makes recruiting, investment banking recruiting, so difficult relates to the first point is networking. People really don't like to network. That's a big takeaway that I got through these calls, and I'm not surprised. Networking is a very inorganic, weird thing to do. You know what you want from that call, they know what you want from that call, and you're pretending to not address the thing that you guys actually want, which is for them to refer you into the job and for you to get into the company that they're part of. Yes, you want to learn more about the role. Yes, you want to learn about their experience so that you could use it in interviews and gain more and really consider whether or not you want to do it. But the objective position, the real reason you're on that call and jumping on a call to pick their brain for 30 minutes is so that they put your name in the pile and pick it out of the pile and you get that referral into that company. My tips would not be to embrace that and say, hey, can you refer me right off the bat? I think treating it genuinely for what it is, knowing that they know what you want and you know what you want from the call, keeping that in the back of their mind, and knowing that if you show true, genuine interest in the role and the company, in their experience, bankers love talking about themselves, you'll ultimately get the end goal, what you actually want of that referral or picking the name out of the pile. Based on my experience on the recruiter side, not the recruiting side, you remember the great conversations that you had for those that actually had genuine conversations. And a lot of times when you have that networking call and this person really stands out, and it seems like they, 1, know what they're talking about, but 2, they care about what you're talking about, you're far more likely to pass that along to HR and say, hey, this kid rocks. Hey, this student is awesome, as opposed to picking up the fact that this person is overly nervous about this phone call and what they really want is that referral. It just seems like they're really trying hard to keep the conversation going as opposed to being genuinely immersed in the conversation. I know, and you know, and we all know at the end of the day that these networking calls feel super BS-y and it seems fake, and everyone in the call knows exactly what's going on without addressing it directly. But investing in the idea that you might as well use this call to the best of your ability and use it as a learning opportunity to learn about the industry, learn about the company, learn about them, and most importantly, learn about yourself, decide whether or not what you're hearing is what you like. I think that's the best approach. On a slightly more tangible note, choosing the right bank/field of banks to go into, I think also is making recruiting very hard. There's so many different banks, so many different types of banks, different types of roles, and you don't know what to focus on. You first go into banking thinking, I'm gonna be an investment banker, I'm gonna make all this money, I'm gonna line logos, but you soon realize that there's M&A and product coverage and ECM and DCM, many of which I didn't even know existed because I've been in M&A during my career in banking. And I think while the generality of wanting to go into banking, your story, the skill set you need and the way that you structure a resume are relatively similar for all these things. You do have to individually prepare for the cultural aspects, the buzzwords that you have to throw down for why you like this firm over another, why you like New York over Chicago. Those are hard things to prepare for and individually prep for. And I think that's relatively unique to banking in the sense that banks have very strong egos about who they are, and the various products that they offer are relatively different for the analyst role. I would circle back to the previous 2 points and say that the best way to combat this is through networking and understanding what these roles actually do, what the company actually offers, and whether or not the people that work at these firms seem like they're relatively enjoying their lives. I think there's no better way to do it. I'm sure there are company websites, forums, dumb YouTube channels like this that kind of try to explain these things, but you can't know the real truth unless you hear from the horses. I always screw this up. Lions mouth themselves. Forums will try their best. You can watch people like me talk about it, but it's far more important and helpful and dynamic to talk about people that are actually in the role over a phone call. A quick point that I always dismiss as not very important because I think this is more of a prerequisite, but technicals always somewhat a difficulty when recruiting for banking, especially when you get a super hardo that asks very difficult questions and tries to push you until the limit and waits for you to fail. I think that happens rarely, and if you're at a bank that's asking those kind of questions, maybe reconsider whether or not you actually want to be at the bank, because realistically, a lot of what you're going to do on a technical side is going to be learned on the job. I think the irony is that you're prepping these technical questions and answers for the interview rather than the role itself. There's so many free resources out there. I've had so many calls where people have said, hey Brian, should I buy this program that's $1,000? Should I subscribe to this curriculum that's going to teach me how to do all these things? I think all these things can be self-taught. There's many great free resources online that you can definitely study from. My punchline is always that banking, recruitment, technicals, if you concentrated and just sat down and set apart time, you could probably teach yourself in a week, at least for the level that you need to get through your interviews. Lastly, and I think this perhaps might be the most difficult thing about recruiting in 2021, and the biggest recurring theme that I've heard across all phone calls, and the saddest reality, it's the overexposure and the competitive field that is involved in banking, and perhaps any role in 2021. All of my calls, especially for college students, always start off with, yo, Brian, I'm on LinkedIn and I see my friends who are 16 and they're incoming summer analysts for roles 5 years later, and I have nothing yet. Hey Brian, I have friends who have all these things on their resume. They already have buy-side experience, sell-side experience, trade-side experience, middle-side experience, and I got nothing. As someone displaying my career trajectory and my career life, and in a way bragging about all the accomplishments that I've done, I know that I'm doing the exact same thing, and it's very impractical advice to give through this video and saying, ignore those things, but ignore those things. Them doing well, them having positions in the future, does not matter for you. Unless you and them are directly competing for one spot, which is far less likely because there's so many roles and so many companies. And even if that's true, you obsessing / being annoyed at the fact that they have that and you not having that isn't gonna change a thing. Jealousy / constant personal comparison only hurts the person doing that act. It does nothing to the person that you're comparing yourself to. We're all human. I'll admit it too. We inherently don't really like when people around us do better than us. That's just how we are set up. It's messed up. And even if they're loved ones sometimes, if they're succeeding, unless they're family, it's really, really hard to feel 100% happy for someone when they're doing well. I'm sure the exception is no different for banking, which is a very competitive field, and people really do whatever it takes to beat others and get that position, secure that internship. I won't go far and say try your best to be happy for them. That's a very hard and mature thing to do. But genuinely, there is nothing to be gained by being constantly aware of what they're doing, constantly reading these LinkedIn posts where they're thanking their entire connection list and saying how they've applied to 300 things and got 5 interviews and had 1 final offer, and a little picture of them smiling with the company logo in the middle. Good for them, but there's no reason for you to obsess over that and looking at that over and over again and sighing and thinking about how you don't have anything isn't going to change anything. Use that time to network, use that time to prep, use that time to consider perhaps other roles and other positions that you might be better at. I am genuinely thankful and really happy about all these meetings that I've had with you guys. I've learned a lot. I think I'm really reflecting on my career as a whole as I hear about you guys talking about your careers and your job trajectories. I hope that whatever recruitment cycle, whatever job that you are going for, everything goes in your favor. And if it doesn't, then it just means that's not for you and you move on. Banking is not the end all be all. neither is any job. There are difficulties associated with every job and every recruitment process. I hope that this video was as helpful as I've intended. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Let's go!